Hi guys, it's Don from farfarway.org. This is the second battle that we're playing in the Battle for Maldorn campaign. So this is a simple enough campaign that was posted on the WWPD affiliate site, Saga Tapestry, by one of the forum members, a guy called Windy Miller. Um, so in the first game, myself and Phil played, and Phil is playing the Saxons. They're the guys with the red bases here, and I have the yellow bases. And in that first game, um, the Vikings narrowly lost. We were fighting across a causeway or two causeways, and it was basically who could get the most of their models on the other side of the river. But it was a tight game, and it was good fun. So in this second battle, it's a fight to the death. So the game will go on for 6 turns, I believe, and if neither of the warlords is taken out in that time frame, then it goes down to victory points. So essentially, you're counting up the dead. Um, so this is the deployment. At the top are the Vikings. They're the guys I'm controlling in this game. I have a warlord. You can see him on the larger base in the middle. He's surrounded by 4 berserkers. On the right hand side, I have 8 herdmen. So that's 2 points worth of models combined into a single unit. And on the left hand side, then there are 8 bondi, so fairly just regular warriors. In Phil's army, he has a unit of 12 archers, and he has taken essentially 3 units of ordinary warriors, or 3 points of ordinary warriors, and combined them into 2 units. Because for the Anglo-Saxons, size matters. The larger the unit, the more abilities they have. So I got the first turn, so I essentially just push my guys down aggressively, trying to trip Phil up a little bit around the terrain. So try to bring the fight into the middle of that village. So he'll maybe struggle to maneuver his larger forces. So in response, I think Phil took a few shots towards my warriors. I was a little unlucky not to take out any. And as you can see, he pushed his guys up as well. Phil, in this stage of the game, started to make kind of good use of some of his abilities on the battle board. He has an ability called the Feared, and this happens in the orders phase. It uses one of the rare dice, but for every unit that's 10 or more, he gets to roll an extra Saga dice. So it's quite a nice ability to increase the number of options that he has, because it allows him to maybe identify a nice combination on the battle board that he wants to build towards later on. So I continued with my plan just to push down. I started to look at some of my own battle board abilities here, and had Njord ready. So Njord is one of the fatigue management abilities that the Vikings have. They have a couple of nice fatigue management ones. Also got ready for a bit of defense, so had a dice in the attack pool, which allows me to generate additional defense or attack dice. So things weren't looking too bad at this stage. But they started to look a little bit worse from here. Phil pushed up one of his units, and he didn't buff them at all into a unit of my warriors, and he comprehensively beat them in that melee. You can see he also managed to push forward again, this time into my berserkers, and in this situation the dice were heavily against him, and my berserkers managed not to kill anybody. Phil killed one in return, and they backed off again. So all of a sudden, my force was pretty much in the back foot here. So I had to start thinking about what I was going to do. So on the right hand side, my herdmen pushed down against the unit of warriors. They're depleting their numbers quite heavily, but they suffered some losses in return. So things weren't looking amazing on that kind of bottom right of the battlefield either. My berserkers went into that unit again, with plenty of buffs from the battle board, and I did, I think, 7 or 8 hits, and Phil managed to defend against 7 of them. He just rolled an insane number of 5s and 6s. The berserkers bounced, which really hurt. And Phil capitalised on him. And the berserkers have quite low armour, so Phil brought his archers around and put shots into those berserkers, taking them out. So now I'm definitely on the back foot. I'm down Saga dice as well at this stage, and you can see my force is looking pretty surrounded at this point. So I had very little option. I had to start pushing down, and you see my warriors essentially ended up being sacrificed. So I had to try and get into a position where, again, train would trip up Phil's movement as much as possible. So this turn it kind of did. He was starting to swarm around the buildings, but that building in the bottom left was going to get in the way. So again, I tried to make use of that, pushing into a position where I was trying to force Phil to engage with his warlord. So use the kind of the warlord's pride, and Phil very effectively used my fatigue against me here. As my warlord began to move, Phil said, I'm going to use a fatigue here to drop his movement. So rather than moving M 6 inches, I moved S 4 inches. So I wasn't able to get in close to his warlord to force that charge. I was hoping to force the charge with a lot of my herdmen around. That he'd get into trouble because I'd have guys to sacrifice and so on. So Phil closed in. He took out some of the herdmen. He's kind of 2 units swarming around me here, and I'm in a position that on my turn I will have to charge him. So try to figure out how to do that to best effect. Well, I came in, I swung, a huge number of hits went in, and again Phil making good use of his battle board. He'd been using shoulder to shoulder earlier in the game, but he had been putting dice when possible onto Bretwalda. And in a melee, he gets to discard that dice. His warlord gains 1 armor, which is quite nice, and he gets to also re-roll once each defense die that did not cancel an enemy hit. So that's quite powerful, particularly when you had so many models around to sacrifice as well. So I managed to put an awful lot of attacks into him, particularly in the last turn, because I used one of my sacrificial abilities called Valhalla. So I was sacrificing Hearthguard, my herdman, to gain extra attack dice. So I put a huge number of hits in, but Phil, with that ability, was able to defend them without having to sacrifice guys. And the game ended like this. So it looks very similar to the last one. In this situation, Phil actually had to charge me because, again, the warlords are pretty close quarters, and he just bounced. He just couldn't get enough consolidated attacks in on the warlord. There was good use of fatigue from both sides at this stage, so I didn't even have to sacrifice the guy behind me. He bounced back, and the game finished here. This was the bottom of turn 6, and it ended in a loss for the Vikings, quite comprehensively. You can see we were completely swarmed. But it was a good game, good fun. So that was the second game in the 3-game campaign. So I'm looking forward to the final game. So I've lost the first 2, but it's good fun. Saga is a fun game. Thanks for listening. Listening.